Hello, everybody. Bethany Dotson, relationship coach and trauma-informed somatic therapist for high-achieving, career-driven women over 40 who struggle specifically in choosing romantic partners and who may be struggling to fully recover from a narcissistic relationship. And I want to talk to you about a common phrase that I hear all the time from clients. This is actually inspired by a client. And a phrase I hear from people who aren't even clients, and that is, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to date. Dating feels like a hassle. I don't have enough time. Where am I going to put this in my schedule? And I want to dive into three main parts of I don't have enough time today. There's my nearly 21-year-old cat. The first one is the real reason behind your statement, your thought, your feeling, I don't have enough time. What's really behind that? The specific coping skills that you may consciously or unconsciously be using right now that keep you trapped in this cycle of never feeling like you have enough time. And when I say the word coping skills, I don't mean in a healthy way. I'm not talking about healthy coping skills. I'm talking about unhealthy coping skills in the way that a person would have several glasses of wine at night to help them unwind. That's an unhealthy coping skill. And then I'm going to talk about the shift that needs to happen in order for you to go from I don't have enough time and using that as an excuse or a story or justification to stay stuck, and how to move into using I don't have enough time as your ultimate motivator for transforming your trauma and really all of the unhealthy coping skills that you may be using to keep yourself safe, but that are ironically creating more unsafety and mistrust in your life. So before we get into the main topics, I just want to highlight that if you've experienced an unsafe relationship, relational trauma, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, even physical or financial abuse, what will often, if not all the time, happen is that you will develop unhealthy coping skills to help you survive that relationship. And that will be disassociating, ignoring red flags, people pleasing, trying to get your partner to change, trying to change yourself in order to fit the relationship, or eventually just numbing yourself out. And those unhealthy coping skills that you developed inside of the relationship to stay in that relationship are going to follow you around after you leave the relationship. And so let's talk about what's really going on when you're saying, I don't have enough time. When you say, I don't have enough time, most of the time, someone who says this is still living with a brain and a body that is trapped in fight or flight mode, in chronic stress mode. If you were in a narcissistic relationship, you lived probably chronically in fight or flight. It was good sometimes, it was bad other times. It was good sometimes, it was bad other times. And this pattern of periods of everything seems to be going good, things seem to be getting better, followed by an even more severe episode of abuse than the previous one. This intermittent reinforcement, not only is that highly addicting, that's called trauma bonding, but it also sets your nervous system and your brain up to never know what to expect. And you therefore become hypervigilant. And when you are hypervigilant, you're basically in fight or flight mode all of the time. You might not feel in that moment like you're running from a bear or you're running from your ex, but you will be living in a brain and a body that you might feel guilty if you want to relax. You feel like you always need to be doing something. You may be the friend that is always on call for other friends or colleagues or your kids that need you. You may always be saying yes to people at work and having a hard time setting boundaries. There's a myriad of ways that this shows up. So when you're living in fight or flight mode, it never feels like a good time to relax. And if you were in a relationship where you were focusing on the other person and adjusting your mood or how you were acting so that you didn't rock the boat, it feels highly uncomfortable to start thinking about what you want and fantasizing about the idea, entertaining the idea of actually dating and having somebody in your life. When you're in fight or flight mode, you're just in survival mode. And it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to start visioning, entertaining, believing that you can have a great relationship. So when people say, I don't have enough time, there is some truth to that. A part of them believes that they don't have enough time, but that is really coming and stemming from a person who is still psychologically trapped in a state of fight or flight. And beyond being in fight or flight mode, when people say, I don't have enough time, what they're often really saying, especially in relation to dating again, is I don't want to be hurt again. I don't want to feel any more pain. I am trying to prevent myself from experiencing more heartbreak, more disappointment, more rejection, more getting my hopes up and then somebody disappointing me or leaving me. And so I don't have enough time is a fight or flight response, a trauma response often, and it's often self-preservation mode. I don't have enough time, for a lot of people, gives them the benefit of I get to keep things exactly as they are. And living and wanting to have a lot of certainty and wanting to have some control over your life, especially after leaving an unhealthy relationship, feels comforting at first. But what happens often, and I've seen this hundreds, if not thousands of times, is somebody who feels this chronic, dull, doesn't go away ever sense of stuckness in their life. They feel like they're missing something. They may have a great career. They may have a beautiful home. Their kids may be doing really, really great in school, or they got accepted into their first choice college. Their kids may have married amazing partners. They have a lot to be grateful for in their life, and on paper look successful and look like they have it all together. But this chronic sense of malaise, emptiness, lack of fulfillment kind of follows them around wherever they go. And this can be at the root cause created by somebody who is still essentially living in a trauma response, who is saying, I don't have enough time, and using that as self-preservation mode, and they don't know how to get out of that. So the real reason, it's a trauma response. Number two, backup reason, it is often self-preservation mode to create a sense of safety. But in the long run, it's actually creating more unsafety and more dissatisfaction. What are two specific ways that the belief system of I don't have enough time will manifest? How is this going to show up specifically in your life? First of all, you might be really good at compartmentalizing. Compartmentalizing is another feature that people will have when they have relational trauma. You may, instead of feeling grief or feeling sad over the loss of your marriage to somebody who is abusive, or feeling loss or sadness over somebody who ghosted you in dating, instead of feeling those things, you will probably try to fill your time and fill the void with chronic busyness, with taking care of other people, with researching, getting lost and stuck in the research phase, but not feeling really any differently about yourself or about your life or about your future in dating, or about your ability to attract a great partner. So compartmentalizing is this very convenient and insidious way that you may try to avoid pain. Another way compartmentalizing will show up is being a workaholic, being always on call in your career, having a lot of things on your plate so that you conveniently don't have any time for yourself to reflect, to feel your feelings, to do any type of inward self-reflection, because slowing down on a subconscious level or conscious level feels unsafe, and allowing yourself to feel your feelings may bring up the fear of, what if I get stuck in my feelings? What if I don't move forward from this? What if I get completely overwhelmed? I don't want to be depressed. So compartmentalizing is a common way that if you feel like you don't have enough time, compartmentalizing your life and avoiding yourself keeps you stuck. It's a way, it perpetuates that feeling and that state of I don't have enough time. The other way is that you're probably going to have control issues in your life. You probably had control issues, if you think about it, in your marriage or your last relationship. There are a lot of women who will complain that their ex was controlling, but we always attract a mirror to our own unresolved issues or a complementary match to our own unresolved issues. So you might think that your ex has control issues, and he probably does. But the control issues that come from an abusive partner are often a complement to the control issues that we have as women who are drawn to partners with manipulative traits. And those control issues from an abusive partner and our control issues all come from the root same place, which is often fear of abandonment or fear of rejection. So if you controlled in your relationship, it might have looked like trying to convince your partner to change their ways, repeatedly bringing up the same issue, using I statements and I feel statements to get the point across that their behavior was harming you. All of these, trying to convince them to go on a diet, all these trying to convince them to watch less TV, all these things that you may try to do to get somebody to fit. And ignoring red flags can be a form of control, not wanting to be honest with the feelings that you're having, because that in some way creates unsafety. You might have to leave that person. They might wind up leaving you. You might speak up and it creates distance. So control issues after you leave are another specific way that this manifests. And this can look like being super rigid with your schedule, feeling prematurely judging people. I've had a lot of women who will start to date and immediately, maybe they're on a dating app or a couple of dating apps, and they just they get so turned off and look for things to be turned off by in other people. It's like the wall is up so high, that self-preservation mode is up so high that they're closed instead of open in that experience. So self-preservation mode, trauma response, I don't have enough time. You are probably keeping yourself unknowingly, despite your best intentions to move forward, trapped in this I don't have enough time mentality by compartmentalizing your feelings, chronic busyness, distracting yourself with things, trips, a couple of glasses of wine every night, doom scrolling on your phone at 11 o'clock every night, ruminating about your ex, having a thought about your ex. And then instead of stalking him on social media, doing the next best thing, which is I am going to research more narcissism to remind myself about how abusive my ex is. All of these things are essentially going to continue to keep you stuck in this feeling of I don't have enough time, et cetera, et cetera. This underneath the I don't have enough time the root cause is fear. And if you're living in fear, which is easy to do, if you had a narcissistic ex, you are going to continue to attract people who are also living in fear. So how do you shift from using I don't have enough time as an excuse to I don't have enough time as your motivator? One of the big reasons that, in my experience, that when I've worked with somebody, one of their big motivators is the feeling like they don't have enough time. Maybe they have teenagers or a teenage daughter who's still at home, but she's 15 or 16 and is going to be leaving the house in a few years. And they don't want the last time that they're in the house to be with a mother who is distracted, snapping at her, emotionally numb, being a chronic workaholic, all of these things. Sometimes people will use their kids as an excuse why they don't have enough time. And then there are those people who use their kids as a reason why they don't have enough time to keep staying where they are. So using factors that are already in your life to be honest with yourself. A question to ask yourself: if my life were to look exactly the same a year from now, and I were to feel exactly the same a year from now, what would be the most troubling part about that? And if you can't even fathom living the same way a year from now, less a month from now, that's a good indicator that you are sick and tired of sitting in your own stuckness, your own excuses, your own stories that you use to justify why it's easier to stay comfortable versus leaping into transformation. So your kids could be a motivating reason why you need to find the time to change, why it's a must to find the time to change. The other big factor that there's two more. The other factor that I see when women using I don't have enough time as a motivator to change is her kids have just left the house, or she's just gotten a divorce and her kids have left the house and she's now an empty nester. And this identity that she once had for many, many, many years, if not decades, in her marriage and being a mom and taking care of kids in the house has now been stripped away. And whenever we have a huge loss of a marriage, the loss of our kids being in the home, we experience a lot of discomfort. And most of the time, it's that level of discomfort that motivates people to change. I don't have enough time to continue living like this. Most people will do more to leave pain, get out of pain, than they will to actually do something that's pleasurable for them. So we'll lean into that. Removing yourself from a cycle of pain will likely be the motivator that's going to shift you from I don't have enough time as a convenient excuse to using I don't have enough time as your biggest motivation to get yourself unstuck after a narcissistic relationship. So your kids not being young anymore, they're going to be out of the house soon. Your kids have maybe already left the house and now you have this blank space ahead of you and you have no idea who you are, what you want. What if I get into another terrible relationship? Am I going to live like this alone for the next several years? I don't know. I don't want to be alone. By the way, loneliness, especially in people that are older, midlife and beyond, loneliness is one of the leading causes of death. And there are doctors and researchers who say that chronic loneliness, and if you were in a narcissistic relationship, 9 times out of 10, you are probably very lonely. Loneliness is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So let that sink in for a second. When we have relational trauma, it's not that we don't want closeness. It's one of the things that we long for the most. But at that same time, there's an internal program, there's an internal barbed wire fence inside that also equates love with unsafety. And it is that inner barbed wire fence that we have to remove rung by rung by rung in order to transform. And for a lot of people, it's easier to keep the barbed wire fence up and avoid making those changes by compartmentalizing and having control issues and using unhealthy coping strategies than it is to actually face their fear, move through their fear, get to the other side of their fear, and then make different choices in their dating and their love life and in their own life with other relationships. So the final reason that will shift you from I don't have enough time as an excuse to I don't have enough time as a motivator is often having some type of a milestone in your life. So a lot of times I'll work with women who maybe they just crossed the 5-year anniversary of their divorce and they're still stuck. I worked with somebody who was 8 years out of her marriage and was still stuck. I've worked with people who were 55 or 65 or turning 70 and were still stuck. So there are a lot of milestones that you might experience that can act as the switch that switches you from, I want to continue sitting in my stories and my excuses on why I want to keep telling myself I don't have enough time so I can stay stuck and comfortable and safe, to I am tired of wasting time. So the question that I invite you to self-reflect on today is, what excuses and stories, maybe beyond I don't have enough time, are you telling yourself that are keeping you comfortable and safe, but ultimately creating more unhappiness in your life? These patterns that we develop as a result of relational trauma are quite addictive in the sense that a drug addict develops a drug addiction, that it's born from the same level of relational and emotional pain. Drug addict is just it's a bit more intense, probably more severe, but the stories that you tell yourself to justify why you don't have enough time, why you'll never meet anybody, why it's so hard to date at your age, why there aren't any good men in your area, why men over 50 haven't done any work. The stories that you tell yourself are in their own way your own addiction. And the only way that anybody overcomes an addiction is to, number one, abstain from using. So abstaining from using your excuses. And then number two, really committing to the inner work that heals that trauma. And then number three, taking different actions in your life that lead to different results. So if you're curious about more, then I invite you to first go and watch the masterclass, BethanyDotson.com/masterclass. This is a 40-ish minute training that gives the high-level overview, the exact 5 shifts you need to make and master in your life. If you are over the age of 40, you're successful in other parts of your life, but your love life is chronically unsatisfactory and probably getting worse as the years roll on. The other option is that if you've been watching for a while, if you feel the call in your heart that you need to make some changes, but there's likely maybe still some fear or uncertainty around that, then, and you would like to explore if we're a good fit to work together, then go to BethanyDotson.com/talk. And we will have about a 45-minute conversation to explore your patterns, explore what you want, and then kind of discern if we're a good fit to help you get from point A to point B. And if for whatever reason it's not a good fit in this type of work, it does need to be a good fit in any therapeutic, coaching, transformational setting where you are enlisting the guidance and support of a professional. It's so important that it feels like a solid fit for you. Unfortunately, I've talked with hundreds, if probably not thousands of women at this point who stayed with therapy or stayed with a coach, and inside they were going to sessions and they didn't really feel like they were getting what they needed. And that can be people pleasing, that can be unhealthy. I don't want to make somebody feel bad. Can be unhealthy coping that we use based on past trauma. So BethanyDotson.com/masterclass if you want to watch the free training, or BethanyDotson.com/talk if you want to have a initial consultation call to see if we're a good fit to help you overcome your relational trauma and attract healthy relationships into your life. That is all I have for you today. Bye for now. Take care.